Hello and welcome to the DEFCON Warning System Digest. I am Thomas Lonely Wolf, the director of the DEFCON Warning System. And since this is the first time we've done something like this, yes, that is my real name. I am a Cherokee. Just a few days ago, North Korea and the United States met in a summit in Singapore. Like everyone else in the world, we put out our own analysis on that. And what I want to do here is I want to go into the thought process behind that, maybe go a little bit more in detail, how we came up with our findings, stuff like that. This is completely off the cuff. I haven't rehearsed this. I haven't made any notes or anything like that. The reason for that is because I want you to get my pure thoughts, not something that was the result of groupthink or formula thinking or, something that wasn't anything less than real. So, reading over the analysis, here's what we said, and then our thoughts behind that. So if I stumble, if you hear me, pause for a moment to gather my thoughts, please forgive me. I'll try and edit some of that stuff out, but I'm going to leave some of that in there so you can hear the actual thinking process happening. So as the world watched, the United States of America and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, more commonly known as North Korea, signed an agreement in Singapore. Note that the word they used there, it wasn't not treaty, not deal, it was an agreement. That wording is very important. A lot of people thought that more was going to come out of that meeting than did. It was only toward the last day or two, or even hours before the meeting, that the United States started downplaying that. Experts started telling people, don't expect much out of this meeting. It really is just a quick meeting. Even before the meeting started, U.S. President said he was going to be leaving soon. The North Korea leader left very quickly after that. You're not going to get a whole lot done. Clearly, a lot of negotiation went on before this, so what they were presented at this summit was basically a framework of what they talked about. And so there wasn't really a whole lot of negotiation that probably went on. It was more just these is what our negotiators talked about before, and now we just like to formalize it. And plus, it was also U.S. President really getting to feel out North Korean leader like he does in other negotiations, and it was also a chance for the North Korean leader to finally get face-to-face time with the U.S. President and see what that guy's like. Negotiations are always, they're different when they're done face to face as opposed to, having negotiators do it away from the leaders who are actually doing the agreement. There was a case where one U.S. president met the Soviet premier. They did all their negotiations like they usually do, but the real big deal came when the two of them just walked in the garden. They were able to talk one-on-one. So there is that the benefit of talking to each other, face to face. But again, no agreement. No, I don't want to say agreement came out of this, because there was the agreement of we're going to agree to this sort of things, but nothing really concrete came out of this. Like I said, there were no treaties. Treaties have to go through Congress. And I'm sure Kim Jong-il has to go back to North Korea and do what they do over there. There were no deals. This isn't like the Iran deal where the U.S. president just kind of made his own thing and did his own thing without Congress. This was just an agreement. I kind of don't know how to go more detailed into that, other than just saying that there really wasn't anything that came out of this that wasn't already there before, except for the United States saying we're going to not do the war games anymore, which was rightly called provocative. So whenever those war games went on, North Korea got their fur all standing on end. And DEFCON raised its level a couple of times until we saw that North Korea was just putting on a show. But anyway, I'm going way off that's kind of the problem with these kind of things. I tend to go off on little tangents that I shouldn't have. So going back to the actual document, for those who look to the Singapore Summit as the beginning of a new era, they are in for disappointment. When looked at from an analytical view, there really wasn't a lot to the agreement that wasn't already on the table. Aside from the United States pledging to end war games in the Korean theater, no one really got anything new or substantial out of Singapore. And that's kind of what I just went over. Nothing came out of that. There was a lot of criticism made in the American media that it was a waste of time. The United States didn't get anything, and that's not necessarily true. While we certainly didn't, North Korea was not going to walk out of Singapore saying we're going to destroy our nuclear weapons right now, and at the end of June, everything is going to be flowers and unicorns. That was not going to happen. The United States was not going to say we're going to lift the sanctions in 2 weeks, and we're going to withdraw our troops, and that's going to be into that. That wasn't going to happen. There might have actually been a peace treaty coming out of that. That didn't happen. It would have been nice, but it just didn't happen. So here is exactly what they agreed to, taken directly from the text of the agreement document, and our analysis will follow, and then I'll go a little bit more into detail on that. So first thing was President Trump of the United States committed to provide security guarantees to the DPRK, which I will now call North Korea. Our analysis is that no security guarantees were actually made. The United States talked about reducing troops in some unspecified future, but nothing was set in stone. The United States said that even things could change should North Korea not live up to its side of the agreement. So again, this goes down to nothing was really agreed to. They talked a good game, said some really nice, fluffy things, but nothing substantial, nothing that says this is going to happen. Definitely, it was all this could happen. Maybe at some unspecified time, who knows when. Jesus could probably come first. Who knows? But there was nothing anyone could take home and say, on this day, this is going to happen. That didn't happen. Certainly, North Korea wants security guarantees. I blame them, not only because they've got the United States sitting on the doorstep, ready and able to do whatever they need to do. They got South Korea there with their giant army ready to go. You got this big nuclear power standing at the doorstep. It's not unusual that North Korea would want some sort of security guarantee, much probably along the lines of what Cuba got during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States pledges not to invade. Well, North Korea would probably like something along those lines. And while the United States said, yeah, well, they're committed to provide security guarantees, that's not an actual security guarantee. I'm committed to go on a diet. Well, that didn't happen. I had some ice cream last night. So there is the definition of commitment. It means really nothing, not unless it's in a treaty. And even then, treaties are made to be broken. But again, going back to my Native American heritage. But again, unless it's in writing and signed and there's pomp and circumstance behind it, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. Next in the document, Chairman Kim Jong-un. Did I say ill earlier? I get those guys confused. Sorry. Kim Jong-un. Please don't send me emails. Chairman Kim Jong-un reaffirmed his firm and unwavering commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Our analysis is that North Korea has been saying that a lot recently, but as many have brought up, the definition of denuclearization may not mean the same thing to North Korea as it does to the United States. That's a very important point to make. I refer you to the articles. North Korea's definition of denuclearization is very different from the United States, as well as our own article, No Good Choices with Korea. Denuclearization to a North Korean can mean standing down. It could mean not pointing their weapons at anything. It could mean a commitment not to do a first strike. The thing is, different cultures have different definitions of the very same word. And that is something very, very important to understand. When you go look at a culture like North Korea, you have to understand the culture. Very recently, there's been a big blow up in the media over at the Singapore summit that U.S. President Donald Trump said to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, I said he is honored to meet him. And the media kind of blew up at that. Honored? How dare you say something like that? You're honored to meet a madman, honored to meet this killer, honored to meet blah, 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 blah. You don't say the word honor to a monster like him. And that just exposes the complete lack of understanding of the North Korean culture. With a culture like that, with an Asian culture, and especially this kind of culture that's rooted in samurai, warrior-like thinking, that is how you talk to them. That is how you greet someone. That's just how it's done. It's an insult to not be honored to meet them. And so it would have been wrong if the U.S. president didn't say something like that. It would have been taken as a grievous insult. It doesn't mean as much to a North Korean as it does to an American in that how the media made it out. It's just how you properly address someone. And in the North Korean culture, to not say that would have been very, very wrong, as opposed to the American culture, whereas you don't use words like that against somebody who has that kind of reputation. So not to beat the dead horse, but yes, you do, because that's the culture. And when you're trying to negotiate with somebody of that culture, you had better respect that culture, because without respecting that culture, you're not gonna be in a very good negotiating position because you've already insulted them. So, continuing with our analysis, future negotiations will have to specify what exactly is meant by denuclearization and how to go about verifying that. Much criticism was made of the deal the United States made with Iran regarding the lack of real inspections and verification. The United States does not want to make the same mistake with North Korea as it did with Iran. I'm not going to go into whether the Iran deal was good or bad. That's for a different analysis. I'm not going to go into whether the United States made a mistake with Iran. That's for a different analysis. And I definitely don't want to get political into this. So I just want to say that from a pure analysis standpoint, the United States wants to understand what denuclearization means, so there's no question, and they want to, and I'll say this again at the end, want to trust but verify. Verification. North Korea has reneged on agreements before. We've seen also where other powers have made commitments, and promises, and treaties, and just lied about them. Russia has made commitments to reduce certain nuclear weapons, and they just go about just making more of them, like medium-range missiles that they're treaty-bound not to make, that they go ahead and make them anyway. And there's questions about the actual number of missiles they have, because there's no real inspections, anytime, anywhere kind of inspections. We kind of don't know what's going on. So at least Russia's a bit more open than something like North Korea. So, and there was that big deal about their destroying their nuclear testing facility, but with the caveat that I'm North Korea, I've destroyed our testing facility. See here, but you can't send any inspectors in. But we're not going to let you test anything. So there's a lot of distrust, and some analysis. Some experts have said it's not as destroyed as North Korea is saying it is. It's still usable in certain areas. So, the United States definitely wants to go in there with, some rigorous inspections to make sure that when North Korea says denuclearized, they mean it the same way that America understands it. The document continues by saying the United States and North Korea commit to establish new U.S.-North Korea relations in accordance with the desire of the population and peoples of the two countries for peace and prosperity. Analysis is that the United States has, in the past, held a philosophy of bringing its style of representative government and living to other nations. It will be hard-pressed to avoid imposing that on a country that is deeply suspicious of outsiders, as well as fearful of having its own power usurped. It certainly can happen, but political forces in the United States are already working to sabotage any deal the United States makes with North Korea by attempting to impose relevance conditions onto it. Critics are already complaining that the agreement did not address human rights issues with North Korea. While laudable, it isn't in the best interest of the United States to muddy the water with side issues. When you're talking about nuclear missiles aimed at your country, you worry first about that and then maybe tackle other things that you deem important. In the same way, if someone is holding a gun to your face, you don't really worry about the fact that he also beats his kids. Put the gun away first and then deal with the other thing. So first off, the statement that the United States and North Korea commit to establish new U.S.-North Korea relations in accordance, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Very fluffy, flowery words that doesn't mean anything. Good for them. They want to establish new relations. North Korea said they're going to forget the past. Not going to past is in the past. That's really good. The United States also is walking in with the same kind of attitude. Technically war for these many decades. We're not going to consider that anymore. Let's start a new relationship. Wonderful, fantastic. I'm glad for that. It means nothing because we still have giant armies looking at each other. North Korea still has its nuclear missiles. The United States still has nuclear power. They still have all these armies ready to go at each other. I'm glad that they're talking about a future relationship, just like the United States and Vietnam have a better relationship than they did back in the 60s, in the early 70s. The United States and Russia have a better relationship than they did during the deepest, darkest Cold War. The United States and Kuwait have a better relationship. Great. Relationships change, and that's good for the future, but it really doesn't mean a whole lot when talking about this Singapore agreement. It's just flowery words that it's just fluffy and just were put there to sound good. So another thing about the Singapore agreement was that, as we said in our analysis, a lot of criticism was levied against the United States for not bringing up human rights. And I do believe the U.S. president said, it was talked about somewhat, but the media is making too much of a big deal about it. Yes, it is important. Yes, I have, like everybody else, have seen, what rural life in North Korea looks like through the documentaries that were made and were smuggled out and things like that. It's horrible, it's rotten. North Korea does a lot of nasty things that a Westerner does not agree with. It makes us uncomfortable. The thing is, as we said in our analysis, those are all wonderful issues that are side issues. You don't worry about them now. What the United States wants to do is they want to turn off the war. They want to keep the missiles from raining down on Los Angeles and San Francisco. And please hold your political opinions. I don't want to hear about the fact that some of you think that San Francisco really should be. The United States' first goal is to protect the United States. And you want to turn things down. If World War III is going on and the United States and Russia are lobbing nuclear missiles at each other, the United States is not going to worry about gulags in Siberia. They're just going to talk about the nuclear missiles. Same thing with North Korea. Side issues are wonderful. Don't worry about them right now. Turn off the war, and when relationships are better, then go for the other stuff. We go back to what the first paragraph of that analysis was. It would be hard-pressed to avoid imposing on North Korea U.S. or Western philosophies. You're not going to be able to say, North Korea, you need to change the way you do things. North Korea is not going to react very well to that. As they become more exposed, maybe they will. China certainly is worried about the outside influence of the Western world. because they like the control over their country, and they don't want people learning too much about the outside world because they're going to want more freedoms. Certainly they don't talk about Tiananmen Square the way the Western world does. It's the same thing with North Korea. They're not going to. The United States still has that philosophy of manifest destiny, and it's not enough that the Statue of Liberty beckons people to come to the country for freedom. We have to impose that freedom on others, whether they want it or not. I'm not going to go into whether that's right or not. I'm just saying that that's something that can be aggravating and provocative to a country who doesn't want it, like North Korea, which can interfere with nuclear negotiations. That's all I'm saying about that. I'm not going to go into the rightness, the wrongness, the morality of it, just saying what can happen if you start doing that. So the document further states the United States and North Korea will join their efforts to build a lasting and stable peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. Always a good goal, but touchy-feely, doesn't really mean anything. What does stable mean to the United States? North Korea, likely different things. Stability to North Korea could mean the United States is out of there and they're one giant country under the rule of North Korea. That would be stability to them. Stability to the United States would be North Korea dissolves, the Kim family goes away, and South Korea just takes over the whole peninsula. That's good stability. Probably incompatible. So, again, flowery, wonderful words that will probably be in negotiations for decades. Reaffirming the April 27, 2018 Panmunjom, mispronounced, declaration. North Korea commits to work toward complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It is typical of new agreements to reaffirm old ones. Happens all the time, but it isn't anything new and brings nothing new to the table. And again, this falls back to what does North Korea mean by denuclearization? It could mean that North Korea will denuclearize when the United States denuclearizes. Yeah, that's never going to happen. And as long as North Korea feels the United States is threatening, why would they even want to get rid of their nuclear weapons? And again, we go back to the article, No Good Choices with North Korea, which goes into detail of how North Korea feels about its nuclear weapons and why it probably is never going to want to give them up. So, denuclearization means something different to North Korea than it does to the Western. The United States and North Korea commit to recovering POW MIA remains, including the immediate I can't pronounce this word for some reason. Immediate return of those already identified. Repatriation, there it is. While this is one of those side issues, this works to North Korea's advantage, as North Korea has, at least internationally, has been working to put a new, more positive image. Put on a new, more positive image. This will help that. Vietnam also worked to repatriation. This really does make North Korea look a lot more reasonable than it has been, especially over the last couple of years. So it's not surprising that they agreed. No, I'll take that back. It is actually surprising that this made it into the agreement. It's a really good gesture, and it really does help them on the world stage, and it actually works against the United States a little bit, because the more reasonable that one side looks, then when the other side doesn't agree to something, it makes that other side look less reasonable. So the more reasonable that North Korea looks, the more it has the ability to negotiate, and the more ability it has to get things from the other side. So when you're negotiating, you always want to look your best. It's kind of the same thing when you go to court. You want to dress nice, you look nice, you always want to put your best foot forward, because when the other person screws up, the judge will look at that and say, well, look at you looking nice, doing good things. This guy being reasonable, well, because you look so good, his unreasonableness is going to look even more unreasonable. So this actually works well to North Korea's advantage. The United States and North Korea commit to hold follow-up negotiations. This is key. Good news, and not surprising given how relations have gone over the last few months. Despite a number of detractors who strangely seem to want negotiations between the United States and North Korea to fail, talking with your adversary is always a good thing. Breaking off communications can be used as a short-term tactic, but in the long run, you can't negotiate anything unless you are negotiating. So there was a lot of rhetoric in the media about, we shouldn't be talking to North Korea. They're monsters. We shouldn't be talking unless they're willing to meet these conditions. Denuclearize, stop pointing weapons, withdraw your troops, or a whole bunch of conditions that North Korea was never going to agree to. So, yes, you can, like our analysis says, you can break off negotiations for a time as a tactic to make the other guy nervous. But ultimately, you always want to be talking, because you can't turn off a war unless you're talking to them. You can't make any progress, any real progress, unless you're talking to them. Yes, sometimes you can say, you're being completely unreasonable. We're going to stop talking to you. We're going to walk away from the table. And, sometimes they'll say, okay, we'll give a little to bring you back to the table. The United States tried that numerous times with North Korea, bribing them, and they came back to the table only to turn around and walk away again, or break agreements because they knew the United States would just keep offering them stuff. Recently, that stopped under this new U.S. president, and that brought them back to the table, and like we've seen, you got to talk in order to get something to be done. So it's wrong to just break off all communications and never be willing to talk, especially when you see that they're just not going to meet these demands, especially when you see that these demands are just unreasonable as far as what they see. It doesn't matter if you think they're reasonable. If you think your demands are reasonable, but the other side just crosses their arms and say it's unreasonable, then it doesn't matter how reasonable think you are, they're just not going to come to the table. And if they're just not going to come to the table, you're not going to get to do anything. So sometimes you just got to break down and say, we're going to talk to you. So the United States, that's what they did. Again, I'm not going to say whether this is good or bad. I'm just telling you the way things are, the way things work. So what exactly does the Singapore Agreement mean? It means there are more talks, more negotiations in the future. That is what came out of the Singapore Agreement. That is the bottom line. That is what happened. That's the takeaway. More talks, more negotiations. For those who were thinking that it was going to be anything more than that, for those that were hoping that it was going to be anything more than that, well, that didn't happen. There were no breakthroughs, no major changes, just an agreement that they were going to talk more. That's a good thing. The United States has already said that sanctions will not be coming off North Korea at this time. It has, however, said that the war games with South Korea will stop. North Korea has said it will destroy its rocket engine testing facility. This destruction of its testing facility was already going to happen. So this did not come out of Singapore. So the United States actually didn't get anything out of this. Turning off the war games, that was a strategic decision. They are always provocative, as we said at the beginning of this digest. War games were very provocative. Did bring up the alert to blue a couple of times. I don't think it ever went to yellow over the war game. Maybe it did. I don't remember. Don't quote me or say it wrong, because I'm saying I don't remember at this time. Remember, I'm doing this off the cuff. I'm trying to remember stuff, so my history may be a little fuzzy on that subject. But it definitely does. It's definitely a gesture by the United States, and we'll see what comes with it. So ultimately, it remains to be seen what is going to happen. Certainly, there's been significant change in North Korea's approach to the United States. Whether this was the result of sanctions crippling the country and North Korea was facing unrest, whether this was because China finally told North Korea to start negotiating its nuclear arsenal, or whether because North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un was replaced by a doppelganger, sure, why not? We'll never know. So there's been a major change in North Korea. Just last year, we were almost ready to go to war with each other. The year before, we were almost ready to go to war with each other. It came really, really close. I don't think a lot of people understand how close it came during the previous U.S. administration. It came really, really close. This one, I'm sure we actually went to DEFCON 3, yellow. It could have went either way for about 18 hours or so when nuclear bombers were going over there and everybody was gearing up. I think that happened toward the nighttime, so it kind of didn't make the news. No, it did make the news, but the seriousness of it did not. It got really scary there. So my tongue is getting a little dry, so I can start hesitating a little bit more. But it definitely has changed. North Korea now more willing to talk. We don't know what happened behind the scenes. China certainly did not like that war seemed to be so imminent on the peninsula. They certainly didn't like how unstable it was. And certainly they saw the possibility of any war on the Korean Peninsula turning against North Korea, even if China decided to help. And China actually said, if North Korea starts a war, they're not going to help North Korea. They're going to stand back and let the United States stomp them. I don't know how true that is, because China does not want North Korea to fall into Western hands. But who knows? It certainly demonstrated their frustration with North Korea. And in fact, North Korea was not trusting of China because North Korea didn't go to China. The leaders stayed away from China. It wasn't until recently they started visiting, so something was seriously happening. And so now, whatever happened, again, the sanctions were definitely hurting the country. When their soldiers are having to eat larvae and steal from the citizens, and the citizens certainly weren't getting anything, you have a really bad situation with an army who is either going to be very willing to surrender, not willing to fight, or could even turn against you. And North Korea relies on controlling its military. Citizens, it really couldn't care about. Citizens are not going to rise up. But a rise up military is something they don't want. And maybe something was going on there where North Korea had to get these sanctions turned down. And while the sanctions have not been taken away yet, that's something they can certainly look forward to if these negotiations go well, and if they start making steps to what the West thinks is denuclearization. We'll see what happens. Some speculate that North Korea has grown nervous about China and is using its new approach to the United States in the same way India uses its relationship with Russia as a check on the United States. Could be some truth to that. Who knows? Again, North Korea, despite their close relationship, does not trust China. They think that China has too much power over them, especially because much of their trade comes from China. If China just shut down their trade, North Korea would just fall into a black hole. China has too much influence, too much control, and North Korea does not like that. So anything that can weaken China's stranglehold over North Korea, they may take advantage of. And cozying up the United States in any way, at any level, is certain to make China a little nervous and give North Korea a little bit more leeway in its own negotiations, in its own relationship with China. Like we said, this happens to other countries as well. India is playing both Russia and the United States, and that gives them tremendous negotiating power, because the United States wants India, Russia wants India. And I don't mean an invasion sort of scenario, but just to have more influence, to have its influence in the area. So that's what's going on there, and that's something that North Korea recognizes as well as a tool to use against China's enormous influence and power over the country. So for the world, this all means that a tentative step toward peace in the Korean theater has happened. But history cautions us. North Korea has made agreements and broken them in the past. Could this be different? We'll see. That's all we can do. As the Singapore Agreement has come out, all it was an agreement to talk more. That's a very good thing, but anything can change. The United States changes presidents at the most every 8 years. There's a new election coming up in 2020 for a president. The current U.S. president may get a second term, may not, who knows? 2020 is a long way away. As of this recording, the United States is having midterm elections, and if Congress, which is currently under control of the same party as the U.S. president is, if that changes to the opposition party, you're going to see the United States come to an absolute grinding, screeching halt. And while the U.S. president, under the Constitution, has power over foreign relations, treaties are decided by Congress, they're ratified by Congress. During the previous administration, they did kind of an end run around Congress with the Iran deal, but it wasn't legal. And so that's why the Iran deal kind of fell apart. With the stroke of a pen, it came into existence, and with the stroke of a pen, it disappeared because it had no legal lasting power, because it was not a real treaty. The same can be done here. If Congress flips to the opposition party, it can make things very difficult for negotiating a treaty with North Korea. It can make it very difficult for any kind of negotiations with North Korea. And it could mire down the U.S. presidency in a whole host of problems at home, because the opposition party has already talked about impeachment and resistance and doing basically what opposition parties do. And this happens in England, it happens in other countries. In fact, U.S. politics is very boring compared to foreign politics. I kind of wish U.S. politics was a bit more like what happens in the House of Commons in England or Italy. Italy is a lot of fun to watch. But U.S. politics is actually a lot more cordial than other politics. But still, it's become so polarized in the United States that it can actually stop the president from doing things. So we have these elections every 2 years where the U.S. House of Representatives can flip and really strangle a president of the opposite party, or even of the same party, if the same party in Congress is too wishy-washy or don't really agree with the president, because that's U.S. checks and balances. So I don't want to go into a big political discourse on this. Just again telling you, this is our analysis of what will happen if these events take place. Like Scrooge, if these shadows do not change, this is what's going to happen. Well, these things happen. This is going to be the likely outcome. It's part of our job, analysis. So when it comes to North Korea and denuclearization, again, I will repeat, in the words of another U.S. president, trust but verify. So that is the thinking behind our analysis. That's how we kind of came to these conclusions. I hope I've given you some more food for thought. We'd love to hear your comments. You can comment on YouTube. We prefer you comment on our community forums. We can monitor those better. We can respond to those better. And plus, when you come to our website, we do have Google Ads on there, and it does generate some revenue because our website does cost money to run. For years and years and years, I paid for this out of my pocket, but it's just become too expensive for me. And, I'm not a rich person. I don't make a lot of money. So when you view our ads, when you come to our site, turn off your ad block. Please, at least let the ads show. And maybe there's something interesting for you. We do have our own shop. I'm not going to plug it or anything like that beyond just saying we do have our own shop where you can get some stuff that goes to our website and pay for the stuff that we have to do. Please visit our website, www.defconwarningsystem.com. We do have a Twitter, DefConWS, where we do our put out, our alerts and important information. We don't spam you. We don't do 1,000 tweets. We don't tweet spam you just to try and get followers or anything. The stuff we tweet out is stuff we think you need to know. And we do, like I said, we do have a community forum. You don't have to register for most of the categories now. You can just post, and we don't need your information, but we do appreciate if you register, because that way we can, you can follow your own posts and things like that. And people who post a lot do get nice little awards and things like that. And again, it's a good place for us to be able to respond better to you and go in more detail. If you comment on Twitter, we a lot of times we don't see those. And most of the time we don't respond because we're just not able to follow threads on there like we can on our community forum. So please come to our community forum, and also YouTube. We can't really respond to YouTube. It's just too hard. We're too spread out, so we try and keep everything centralized on our community forum. So please visit our site, visit our community forum, and if you like this digest, we'll try and do more. I know it's long, and I know I do tend to ramble on and go off on these things. And hem and haw. We'll try and edit some of that out, but most of it will just be in there, just cuts. So thank you for listening. Again, I'm Thomas Lonely Wolf, Director of the DEFCON Warning System. Thank you very much.